Yeah, well, let's go back to history. After the Second World War, the Germans did what they did to the Israelites, and then Holocaust was formed. After that, the Jews had nowhere to go, so America had to do something about the Jews, and then they created the state of Israel in the middle of the Arabs, where Israel is situated today. They did this to accommodate the Jews somewhere, and also to fix them somewhere where the Bible says Israel is situated. There has been a war between Palestine and Israel since then. They have fought over 75 years since 1948. Last year, in December 29th, South Africa filed a case against Israel for the fact that has been going on since 2021. As an African, I don't like to talk about what is not happening in Africa, but in this case, I'm going to talk about it because South Africa is concerned. So South Africa took Israel to the ICJ, the International Criminal Court of Justice, where South Africa accused Israel of genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. And South Africa had some victory about it, where the ICJ reported that Israel should not continue murdering those people, where the ICJ reported that Israel should stop the genocide in Gaza and respect that Palestinians are people while in their home and should not be killed. Now there has been these negotiations about whether Palestinians should leave Gaza or Israelites should leave Hamas. I don't have any opinion on that because I'm an African. They should know themselves where to go because that matters is peace. Yeah, the president of Kenya at one time sided with Israel, and in this video I want to specifically say that that was not Kenya, that was President Ruto. Because I, as a Kenyan, I'm neutral about the war in Russia, Ukraine, and about the war between Israel and Palestine. I'm calling myself an African in this case because nobody talks about what is happening in Burundi. Nobody talks about what is happening in Zimbabwe. Nobody talks about what is happening in Congo, Central Africa, Sudan. And they don't care about us because we are Africans. And I don't need to care about anything about white people because if they don't care about us, why should we care about them? So in this case, I'm talking about the ICJ because South Africa involved in itself. And we need to talk about Africa, not all these things we are always talking about. We know that America is creating all these wars. America is behind whatever is happening in Congo. Yeah, I can blame America for that because we are all using these electronic items that the raw materials that are making them can all be found in Congo. And we are using these things knowing that they have been used making the raw materials of Congo's people. And nobody cares about Congo's people. Even children are going to mine those raw materials for the biggest companies like Apple.
Earlier today, the International Court of Justice in The Hague in the Netherlands issued a ruling that is a victory for international law, for human rights, and above all, for justice. This follows the unprecedented action taken by South Africa to take another country to the International Court. On the 29th of December 2023, South Africa filed an application instituting proceedings against the State of Israel for the violence it has unleashed on the people of the Gaza Strip, arguing that Israel was in breach of its obligations under the Convention. South Africa had earlier condemned the 7th October 2023 attack by Hamas and other groups that resulted in the deaths of many Israelis and the taking of hostages. The court, in its judgment, affirmed South Africa's right to take Israel to court, even though it is not a party to the conflict in Gaza. The ICJ, as the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, has handed down a ruling that the State of Israel should immediately implement a set of provisional measures to prevent any further acts of genocide in Gaza, and to desist from such acts and to take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence relating to acts of genocide. As the South African government, we welcome the decision of the International Court of Justice. We note the court's statement that it is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering, and that the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is at serious risk of deteriorating further before the court renders its final judgment. We welcome the measures that the court ordered by majority decision, ruling that the Israeli military should not commit acts of genocide against Palestinians. Israel should take all measures to prevent and punish incitement to genocide. Furthermore, it should take immediate and effective measures to allow basic services and humanitarian assistance in the form of food, medication, and other basic necessities to Gaza, and it should also preserve evidence of what is happening in Gaza. And lastly, it should submit a report within a month on all measures taken to give effect to the ICJ order within 1 month. This order is binding on Israel and must be respected by all states that are party to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. We expect Israel, as a self-proclaimed democracy and a state that respects the rule of law, to abide by the measures handed down by the International Court of Justice. After more than half a century of occupation, dispossession, oppression, and apartheid, the Palestinian people's cries for justice have been heeded by an eminent organ of the United Nations. Today, Israel stands before the international community, its crimes against the Palestinians laid bare. Since October last year, the people of Gaza have been the victims of bombardment and strikes from land, sea, and air. Homes, refugee camps, and entire neighborhoods have been destroyed, and not even schools and hospitals and religious places have been spared. The people of Gaza have been deprived of electricity, fuel, food, and medical supplies. According to the United Nations, more than 25,000 people have been killed during Israel's war with Hamas. And we hold the view that this has been collective punishment against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Among the dead are relief workers, United Nations staff who have died in their hundreds, as well as journalists who have also died in their hundreds. More than 16,000 of the dead are women and children. In October 2023, the United Nations Children's Fund said, Gaza has become a graveyard for thousands of children, born and unborn. According to the United Nations, thousands of children were killed in just the first 3 weeks of the current conflict. As South Africa argued in its application to the International Court of Justice, the high civilian death toll and the sheer scale of the devastation that has resulted from Israel's response to the 7th October attacks is vastly disproportionate to any claim by Israel that it has been acting in self-defense.